We begin this review with a new creation from ZMF Films, better known as ZMF today, the Caldera. This planar headphone, a first for this company, is the culmination of the last 14 years of development, beginning the story with the modding of planar drivers back in the day, which led to the creation of the very first in-house headphone, the Atticus, the Aeolus, the Verite, and then there was a pause for the cause. Some new development had to be put into place and some new technologies had to be created, starting with the atrium dampening system for the new headphone at the time, the atrium open and now the atrium closed. But in the background, the development of a planar driver was underway, undergoing serious revisions over and over and over again, eliminating problems, developing new technologies. The CAMS for the Caldera, finally releasing these onto the market. Hi, I'm Koji CEO. Welcome to ConvinceMeAudio. Let's look at the ZMF Caldera together. A very special heartfelt thank you to Zach and Bev and the team for lending this unit to CMA for review. It's very much appreciated. This review is the second revision. The first review was shot last year around April time, and it was supposed to be released prior to Munich, but unfortunately due to a lot of unforeseen circumstances, the review got delayed. And finally it got thrown onto the editing table in December, and I looked at it and I realized so much had changed, starting with my thoughts on the unit itself. These units have had over 1,000 hours on it since they were released. A nice selection of pads, including one of these, my favorite, like thin cowhides. But before all of that, let's discuss the headphones themselves. These are very much designed in the same manner as other ZMF headphones. Same traditional headband, head strap, different materials for the adjusting mechanism in the selection box when you buy this unit, and then we drop to these beautiful baffles which are carbon fiber, beautiful woods that can be selected in a variety of styles. And when you put this next to the Verite and Atrium, it's kind of difficult realizing which one is which because it's a ZMF headphone, so I usually detect it via the big grills here. Some of these grills are smaller than others, some of them stick out, some of them concave inwards. But predominantly the headphones are pretty much of the same family and look stunning on the wall. Mini XLR is still used, this hasn't changed, I don't believe ever, thank you Zach. Consistency is key over here. And the exciting stuff is underneath these wedged Caldera pads. Now on the Caldera, there is a right pad and a left pad. One of them is indicated via a little red dot. The pad itself is wedged. The thicker part of the pad resides underneath the ear like so, and the flatter part of the pad is gently resting on your cheek. Same rolling style is used. You basically spread it like this and you put it over the baffle. Easy, straightforward, finicky, and just depending on who you are and how much experience you have. Pad rolling is an essential part of ZMF headphones. Though I do find this method a bit cumbersome, I prefer magnets the way, for example, a tungsten or a Meze is. But it is what it is, and these pads can be used with other headphones. The Caldera itself is a 60 ohm headphone, 95 dB sensitivity, pretty easy to drive, hits its ceiling pretty quickly, and equipment pairing is not as essential as a Hi-Fi Manzesvara or LCD5. Thank you. That is quite important. The development of the proprietary technology for the driver is this volcano-esque, hence its name Caldera, cone-shaped design for the magnets in front of the driver. This is a new development for ZMF. He was trying to keep and maintain the same house sound, the same weight, tonal density, and most importantly, gorgeous mid-range, etc. And new developments had to be made in-house for this criteria. I will link both of Zach's own documentaries in regards to the development of Caldera on his own channel down below. These Calderas are as comfortable as any other ZMF headphone, and being able to choose a myriad of finishes and woods and stuff, etc., you will be able to find one that suits your needs, and they cruise around the 490 to about 530 gram category, so not too bad at all. Distribution of weight is rather nice and quite comfortable. Originally, I reviewed the Calderas on the Wells Audio Headtrip amplifier review here, and the Rockna WaveDream DAC, the HoloAudio May DAC, the HoloAudio Bliss amplifier, the Sigphrid amplifier, and everything else in between, this Questyle CMA15, etc., and Cayin HA300 Mark IIs as well. LTA Z10E obviously was the reference for the channel. Now we have moved on to something new. The technicality of these headphones is fantastic. I think it sits very comfortably in the $3,500 category, and I honestly think it encroaches the $4,500 category very easily too. Previously, my couple of gripes with the Caldera were dynamic range and a slight graininess that I felt was part of the drivers, and I took this to be the first gen of its kind, planar, etc., and I kind of did not love the headphones. I appreciated their technicality, I just couldn't find the soul. I couldn't find the connection, and I filmed the review, and then the review got delayed, and maybe that was the universe trying to tell me something. You're not quite hearing what Calderas can do. Many months went by, and now we have tested Calderas after 1,000 hours of break-in, at least a myriad of new headphones and equipment in between. A replacement of the mesh over the drivers. This has the new mantle mesh, slightly open, and the introduction of the cowhides. Planars sometimes require break-in. This is an actual thing. Sesvara's, Aria's, many headphones in my 3 years of testing and reviewing headphones professionally, and another decade prior to that, have always led me to believe that you need the equivalent break-in time per driver. So this has had it. How does the Caldera sound? Let's take it stock first. The ZMF Caldera is a neutral bright headphone. It emphasizes a little bit around the 6 kHz region, and its mid-range is derived of the Verite somewhat, so a touch warm. But it is a neutral headphone with certain elevations here and there. I find that this headphone sits very comfortably in the family of ZMF headphones, and I feel as though you could own Atrium and Verite alongside this, because it's a gradual leaning into whatever direction you line these headphones up in. For example, Atrium being the most neutral with a bit more of a darker mid-range to my ears, one of the most beautiful tuned headphones I have ever come across despite of price. Then subtly leaning into the Verite, where it becomes a little brighter. The mid-range is a bit more lush, warm sounding, and Caldera's goes bam, sitting right in the middle of both of them, taking that slight neutrality of Atrium, slight darkness, yet taking the quick, resolving, slightly warm characteristics of the mid-range of the Verite Open. This is the perfect balance of the two, and genuinely more resolving than Verite Open, which I actually originally did not agree with. I thought Verite Open was more resolving and more dynamic. But after this break-in period and this open mesh, I have found Caldera's is the next step up from Verite, and at least 2 steps up from Atrium. The graininess is gone. The headphones themselves are viscerally impactful, not so elevated in the mid-bass the way Atrium is, and more tactile and texturally rich than Verite in the bass response. With a culmination of the tuning of the ZMF house sound, the weight, the tonal density, the rich vocals, the smooth characteristics, and the presence of instruments. Drums is superb on this. Honestly, I think there's only a couple of other headphones that rival it. This is an utterly outstanding headphone. I've spent the last 3 weeks, 6 hours a day listening to this, and I have Sesvaros 1266, Stealth, LCD5, Verite Open, and all the rest here at the same time. I've been using this on the go, on the Diablo 2, using it on the desk with a CA100T, and with a myriad of other equipment here at the same time. I am in love. I found the soul of Calderas, and they can be your one and only headphone, and they can also live alongside your others. Okay, the Calderas on equipment. So let's start with the lower stuff. So on the Diablo 2, I think this drives it fantastically well in this price category. It's extremely punchy. It leans into the detail retrieval more on that brighter sound characteristic. So the cowhide's a little bit more no-no on that. I would say use the stock pads if you have a Diablo 2. But it does provide that beautiful lush mid-range and incisiveness, and for electronic music it's absolutely wonderful. I've been using it consistently every day. On the CA100T, this is a tube, hybrid and op-amp based unit. Player, streamer, review will be coming. I don't think it knows what it is, so it tries to do everything, and it's pretty good at everything, to be honest with you. Using tubes on Caldera, it's like other ZMF headphones, is god tier. It's absolutely amazing, texturally rich, and definitely a bigger body to the bass response, adding a touch of that holographic characteristic to all the instruments and the singers and the presentation of the music. It's rather wonderful, especially when listening to acoustic jazz, when listening to live bands, etc. Throwing this on the higher end equipment like Cayin HA300 Mark IIs, Headtrip, etc. It's off the charts. But I did state at the beginning of the review that Caldera's hits its ceiling very quickly. You don't need such tremendous huge chains to drive this to pretty much 95% of its potentiality. It's very, very easily done. Thank you. Oh God, finally a pair of headphones that can actually do things very, very easily without breaking the bank. So you go alongside Binomial for me, and you go alongside some of the other easier to drive headphones like even Lyrique, etc., where it doesn't need such a big amount of cash flow. Taking the album Blackbird from Alter Bridge, metal, not badly mixed and mastered. It's not great either, but I think it's a good indicator of actually how these headphones perform with some badly mastered stuff, which we will get onto some good stuff in a minute as well. The meaty guitars, the visceral low end, and the very angry sub-bass category will have to be given to the Atrium. I think then comes Caldera, then finally Verite. I think Caldera is a bit more technically capable. It's definitely more defining in the bass category and instrument category within the stage, so that around the instrument is a void where perfect resonances of the instrument can be heard. I think each instrument has the ability to actually stand out within the stage and not encompass another instrument next to it. Every instrument is very large sounding, which is quite surprising. It's definitely a bigger sounding headphone than Verite and Atrium. And not only that, I think it's a fuller sounding instrument. Not a fuller sounding headphone, a fuller sounding instrument. So for example, if you're listening to a saxophone, a double bass, a drum kit, from the upper frequencies all the way to the lowest frequencies, the instrument sounds well defined, full bodied and big and tonally dense and very weighty. taking an electronic track here, something from Infected Mushroom in the Converting Vegetarian album. This is where some indicators can be seen of spikes. For example, the mid bass of Atrium is the most elevated. Sometimes it can sound a little too much, and I would say it never really truly bleeds into the upper bass region, but I think the control is given to Calderas and then Verite open. So in linearity form, I would give it to Verite first, then Caldera with a bit more elevation, impact and visceral punch, and then the incisive, angry, huge punchiness of Atrium. Upper bass region, all three of these headphones, Verite, Atrium and Caldera, is very well articulated. Nothing sounds thin on any of these headphones. Presentation is excellent, resolvability is like this. Atrium at the lowest, and then Verite with that beryllium, snappy, resolving quick driver, and then the insanity of Calderas above those two. Mid-range, this is my speciality, this is my love. Any headphone with wonky mid-range, with something out of whack, I pick up on and I do not appreciate. Fortunately, all three of these headphones are spectacular, but giving different tonalities in their own way. I would say Atrium is the most neutral, then Verite on the other end of the spectrum, and Caldera sitting in the middle. Vocals, female category in the lower to mid, for example, Billie Eilish taking the track Lovely, is rich, articulate, close up and in your face and beautifully presented. You can almost see the expression on that girl's face. It's beautiful. Then we go to Verite. I think this is where an emphasis on the warmth is actually more defined using the BE2 pads. And then obviously Atrium being a more darker reference neutral sound is gorgeous, but you take your pick. The treble region, I think the most aggressive out of the three is definitely Verite for me. Then I would give it to Caldera. Then I would give it to Atrium. I would say Atrium is the least resolving out of the three. Then I would give it to Caldera, because I've been having a little issue with cymbals and metallic sounds. I don't think it sounds quite on the levels of Verite for articulation and timbre. I think this is more along the lines of the LCD5 rather than, say, for example, a Sesvara for that metallic sort of sound. But I am using an open mesh with these pads, so there's a lot of variations that we can play with. And obviously this is on solid state right now. Macro dynamics is wonderful on this headphone. I would say Atrium first, then Caldera, then Verite. But they're pretty close to each other. They're all very, very viscerally impactful. They're all kind of insane. And they all can cross large boundaries in regards to genres. I think the Verite is the least, Atrium is the most, but Caldera sits in the middle again. How does the Caldera fare against the Sesvaras, the LCD5 and the Dan Clark Stealths? Let's discuss. Caldera, using these stock leather pads, is a different tuning to Sesvaras to my ears. I think it's more lush in the mid-range. On comparable equipment, it's more meaty, it's more weighty, and it definitely punches harder. Sesvaras does all of those things and more when you go up in scale in regards to the equipment. I think to get a punch the way you do on a Caldera, for example on the Astel and Kern over there, the CA1000T, or even the Diablo, you need an AHB2 with Sesvaras to get the same large movements of air to move and that punch. The treble region, timbre and textural information and tactility, nothing can touch a Sesvaras. It's the most organic sounding headphone on the planet. But Calderas, with its tonal density and timbre, can achieve a lot of that with very, very, very lower end equipment. The ceiling of Calderas can be hit very, very quickly. I think the Calderas stage-wise, I would say on the equipment I have tested, matches the Stealth probably on the levels of the Sesvara. They do trade blows depending on what tube amplifier you put them on, but LCD5 is definitely behind these lot in regards to stages, rather intimate. What surprised me was the stealths being able to keep up with the Calderas in regards to stage. That's more of a Harman curve tuning. This retains that Harman curve tuning somewhere in the mid-range really. It's between 3, 4, 5 kilohertz-ish, maybe slightly lower, 2, 3. And it's not as reference sounding as the stealths, definitely. This is more of the ZMF tonality and weight and density. This is definitely a ZMF headphone. You will not miss it. You will be able to derive a lot of ZMF out of the Calderas. I would say don't dwell too much on the topology of planars and dynamics, because Zach has done an incredible job here matching both topologies so that you get the best of both worlds. You've got the speed, resolvability, impact, macro dynamics, and the low sub-bass extension of planars. The amount of blood and sweat and going back to the drawing board that Zach has put into this is quite insane. And he has managed to get the dynamics, the weight, and the organic characteristics of the Verite into the same planar driver. In the Verite Open review here, I stated, this is the best of Zach's headphones. I will have to eat my words. I never truly heard Calderas the first time around the way I've been hearing it over the last few weeks now. Maybe it was down to breaking. Maybe it's down to the open mantle mesh, but my goodness. This, alongside Verite and Atrium, will be on my wall for very long time to come. These are the cowhides. These change the sound characteristics of the Caldera quite significantly. It becomes a brighter sounding headphone. It definitely opens up the mid-range so that it really does lean into the Verite mid-range characteristic. It's a lot closer. It's a lot more taking little notes from the HD800S in the mid-range category. This is definitely a brighter sounding pad, so bear that in mind. It's not for all genres the way these pads are, but these have been my favorite. They feel a bit more resolving, a bit more airy, a bit more open, and my goodness, on tubes, these are the pads I've been using consistently. They are definitely a brighter sounding pad than the stock. I find that the bass response is definitely the same, but the presence and the articulation and the resolvability and the detection of instruments bound within their stage is a lot more prominent on the cowhides than it is on the stock for me personally, and in conjunction with a frequency response of my own hearing. You guys know as a long-time viewers, I'm sure, and for those of you new to the review and new to the channel, hi and welcome. You know mid-range plays a very big role in my life when music is concerned, and I must say the Calderas don't disappoint. I genuinely prefer it on the cowhide because it's more open, it's more brighter sounding, more resolving, and it's just gorgeous. I don't think you'll go far wrong by owning both of these, but some of you who are a little bit sensitive to the regions of about 10 to 13 kilohertz, this one you have to be a bit careful with this because it's a bit genre specific. So those trashy metals and stuff will highlight the slightly more off timbre in the treble region on solid state for me personally, and I think the open mesh, the mantle mesh, is playing a little bit of a role here. It's smooth, don't get me wrong, it's just not quite the timbre my brain agrees with in regards to, for example, cymbals and hi-hats. I've been around real drums for many years, and I feel as though this is a little tiny bit crunchy and a little bit swishy swashy. On the levels of LCD5, on tubes, this is really resolved. Definitely helps that a great deal. It's the same story as Utopia. The timbre is really improved via tubes, but Calderas on tubes is it's something else altogether. On the LTA Z10E, on the Cayin HA300 Mark II with L-Rogs, on the Astel & Kern CA1000T, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's become my favorite ZMF headphone. unfortunately, it's knocked off my beautiful, beloved Verite off the perch a little bit, because I am getting a little bit of Verite and a little bit of Atrium with more resolvability and technicality out of the same headphone, and it prevents me from going, okay, let me listen to Verite right now. I think Verite's got a more holographic presentation, but Caldera's incisiveness and Caldera's big body of instruments, it really does sound big. The instruments really do sound full and in-depth and really large sounding, and I love that. So conclusion, should you buy the Calderas? I think because this review is so late, many of you already own it. So tell me in the comment section how your experience has been. For me, it's like discovering your old love again and finding their soul in the back of the sofa, and it's divine. Without the quirkiness of Sasvaras and needing an entire mortgage for the reference chain. You can drive Calderas pretty easily. Calderas, solid 4 tigers out of 5. Well done, Zach. This is exceptional. If you fancy reviews such as this, consider joining Patreon, where you get early reviews, my thoughts and feelings as equipment comes in, if my feelings change on equipment, way before YouTube and way before the review is complete. And you get to talk to me via voice and ask my advice in the private Telegram chat. If this is beyond your means, your like, your share, and your comment down below is all I require from you. Until the next one, peace.